Welcome to another episode with your host, Robert E. Hansen, psychic medium, author, and public speaker.
Hi, welcome back. Today we're talking about the gift of failure. Failure is a term that carries with it great negative connotations, right? Their baseball team is playing a game and they go to the championship and they lose the game, and often the public, the media, TV, etc. will say, well, they failed. They were trying to win the Super Bowl. They are a failure. They tried to win the World Series. They're a failure. The season is a failure, right? A very painful, like an arrow through the soul kind of a commentary. Many of the great athletes that compete in sports, for example, when they are not successful, when they have not completed their task, which is to win a championship in their own division or their own league, people will say, well, how'd your season go? It was okay, but it ended in a big failure. We didn't win, and on that level, we all recognize it. You put your efforts into an education, for example, or you put your efforts into some type of a job or some type of a construction company, or you're working in a particular setting where you're really giving it all you have. And at the end of the time, the results are not paying the dividends you had hoped. You might say, I put 2 years into this project. I gave it all I had. I maxed out my credit cards. I borrowed money from people. I did everything I could to make the restaurant go, or I did everything I could to make the boating marina work, and it still failed. I failed, right? And it makes it a personal commentary about the self, saying, I failed, independent of the fact that you may have done everything possible on Mother Earth to make it work. You may have spent every waking hour dedicating yourselves to the project at hand. You may have decided that you're going to set aside all other personal pleasures, all other fun, all other vacations, and you're just going to dedicate yourself to the success of a particular program, or at least the hopeful success of a particular program, or an outcome of a particular business, or perhaps you've invested into a relationship with somebody else or something else. And at the end of it, the payoff is not in the cards. You just seem to say, you know what, I just can't do it anymore. It's a failure. It doesn't make any sense. Now, on a certain level, of course, this is not an incorrect statement. It's not. There are people that enter into relationships, whether it be with schoolwork, with other people, with business, in spiritual practice, you name it. People invest a lot of themselves and they don't seem to get what they anticipated was the payoff or the reward for the efforts expended. And they use this, language, which I've been sharing here for a few moments, that there's this failure. And yet the topic of this little chat is the gift of failure. The gift of failure. So what the heck am I talking about? How can failure be a gift? Well, we're going to roll the camera back a little bit. And if you go back into the early years of your development as a young developing human animal, right? The human animal, right? Like all other animals out in the wild, the young bird or the young turtle or the young tiger, you can see little, videos on animal channels or these different National Geographics, and you'll see the bird trying to get the worm, and the mama bird is standing by, and the little bird just can't seem to get the worm out of the ground. Or you watch the mother lion watching her little cubs trying to go out and get a scent of their first meal of the day on their own, and they get frustrated and they start crying in the savannah. They're laying there. They just can't seem to catch the deer. And then the mother runs after it and gets it and brings it back and feeds her babies. So, yes, on one level, these little ones, for example, have failed. They have not successfully completed the task. And as young developing children, we recognize that us, all humans, myself included, obviously, you experiment, you investigate, you research, you expose yourself to different challenges. And so, quite frankly, a lot of these challenges become very, very unpleasant and very painful, right? And you learn what you have done right, and you also learn perhaps where you've misplaced your footing. You learn the positives of the experience, but you equally learn the negatives of the experience. Now, there's a very strong argument that the positive experiences, the positive up parts, let's say, of a baseball season, the positive games, develop a confidence and a certain sense of well-being within the athletes that participate. Yes, and they say, we had a great run, we had 10 games in a row, we won. We have learned a lot about the positive aspects of our ball team, and that is all very, very good. However, we also have come to see that we need work in these other areas. Now, for certain people, they call that a failed season. For other people, they will say, well, yes, on one level, we did not win the World Series. That is true. But we have learned through our failures, through our misplay, through our mishandling of certain situations, what we can correct next time around for next season. And we will improve on these areas that we need work on, while we will also continue to improve on the areas that we have done well in, right? Any true athlete always appreciates the basics. The artist appreciates the basics. A professional linguist, a writer, all right, someone who composes words to sentences and paragraphs, always go back to the core basics of good structure of grammar, punctuation, and the working knowledge of pen to paper. They always go back to it because it gives them grounding. So there is absolutely a big upside to the positive sides of developmental learning, which is called reinforcement, right? You learn that if you do this and you do that, the result is good and positive and well received. So the reflex is to go back and repeat it and perhaps even improve upon it. On the other side, you have folks that take the failing part, the part that was not successful, the part that hurt them, the part that let them down. And depending on the personality, there are folks that will blame others for this. Well, I played great, but they didn't. I should have won, but they didn't let me have it. All of that stuff. That's not a team player anyway. That's not a team player. And then even if they're playing on an individual level and they're not successful, there are all these guys out there, men and women both, who will blame the audience. They will blame the producer of the record company. They will blame the other nurse on the staff. They will just blame. They refuse to accept any failure as their fault. And sadly, these people never really learn to self-improve. They don't see failure as an opportunity to grow. They see failure as a negative experience in which all they do is feel diminished and less than capable. That's their problem. It really becomes a problem. And unless they turn around and take a good look at how they're interacting with their own soul, how they're responding, because at the end of the day, it's your life, right? It's yours, right? And if you are not growing and evolving and developing, then either you're sitting completely stagnant, which means in time, like a pond of water that has no flow, a stagnated pond doesn't particularly exude a great comfort and a good smell, right? There are people that are like that. They're kind of dark. They're in themselves. They're angry at the world. Everything hurts. Nothing is good. No matter what I try, I fail. It's no point in putting out your effort. Those kind of guys, right? And then there are people who are really, really understand the beauty of failure. And they say, wow, I didn't realize that in my math equations, I kept making this mistake. Oh, I couldn't understand why I was failing my exams. Now I see it. And the professor came over and showed it to me. I'm like, because I failed, it brought attention to this. Had I not known through my failure that this was happening, I probably would have repeated it. It may have gone by the boards and I wouldn't have noticed it, and I would continue to repeat these mistakes, not even realizing I was failing at something. I was just getting by. And I could have been so much more developed if I had simply listened to what I was making mistakes in. So my failure became my positive. I don't know a single athlete, and I mean I don't know a single athlete, and I've been in athletics all my life, that who in competition, of course, you have your head down and you feel disappointed and, you could feel sick and all of that stuff because you work so hard to get to a certain end and it doesn't work out. But anyone that is a true champion of the soul, anyone that is truly a competitive athlete will say, let me see what I blew, what I do wrong. Show me the videos. Let me talk to my coach. I got to speak to my trainer. I got to speak to the guys on my team. I got to talk to them. And I want to find out where the hell I failed. I mean, I got to understand it. I got to see it. I want to talk about it. I want to improve on this. So because I failed, it becomes my motivation to improve. It doesn't become a negative about me where I say to myself, I am worthless, I am no good, I'm no point in even trying anymore, I will never succeed. And let's get something else also very cleared up here. I don't play golf. I'm not a golfing person. I think it's a great sport. It's a great recreational activity, however you want to describe it. It's worldwide and very, very popular, very, 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 very well watched on TV and elsewhere. It's a big thing, right? But not everyone can win the Masters. You get one person that does that. Has everyone else failed? Of course not. I mean, on a very specific level of saying who's the champion, someone might say, well, Mr. A, B, and C is the champion. It doesn't mean everyone below the champion is a failure. It just simply means on that particular day of work, or that particular week of work, one particular athlete exceeded the others, like a horse race. If someone wins every single time, anything they ever do all the time, there is no knowledge, there is no wisdom, there is no learning, there is no black and white, there is no two sides of the coin, which is crucial for developmental change. It is extraordinarily important to know dark, and it's important to know the wisdom of light. They both offer wisdom and knowledge. It is no different between success and failing. So if you are failing at something, allow it to be your motivation. Allow it to be the driving force within you. Look at it to become that which creates self-improvement, self-awareness, self-illumination. Otherwise, you are judging yourself harshly, and even if others are judging you now, even others are saying, you have failed us, meaning they have decided that your behavior was not what they felt it should be, right? You are a failure. You have options. You can either rise above and take note of what they say and say, they're looking in a certain direction of what I've done, and I have to take accountability of that. I have to be self-trusting and self-honest. If I didn't do the work, if I didn't put in the effort, if I didn't make the training that I should have made, I've let my team down, I have failed my club. Now I can make excuses for that stuff and move on and just avoid this kind of confrontational or dialogue or communication about the way I work. Or you can say, you know what, they're right. I did fail them. I did let them down. I did not do what I'm capable of doing. And moving forward from this moment on, I will take full measure of that. Or I know I can't provide that to them. No matter what I do, I cannot give them that. I'm not built like this. I don't have that kind of a personality or that kind of a genetic makeup to push myself to those limits. Therefore, when I play baseball or I play golf, I'm just going to do it for self-enjoyment and self-fun. I'm not going to go into the competitive market. It's too much for me. It doesn't mean you have failed. It simply means you've come honest with yourself, not as an excuse. Not everyone is designed to be a PGA golfing world champion, or everyone would be doing it, right? So to measure oneself in failing and winning is a very surfacey thing. What is most important is in the moment that you're in, when you are moving through that particular moment in your life, and I mean like right this moment, right? The gift of failure is the root the core, the absolute essence of what drives success. It drives success, right? Not to be religious about this, but I'm just going to give you a little slant on this as we finish. If you look at the Christ figure historically, from the eyes of the outsiders, the Christ figure's life was interrupted by the time he was 33 years old. All his teaching, all of his miracles were interrupted at 33. If you were stepping from the outside, even if you were one of his apostles, you could step back and say that Jesus failed. He wasn't able to complete his mission. He didn't do what we thought he would eventually do. Instead, he was crucified and he dies, and the mission is over. But in truth, and really looking at it, not only was he not a failure, he was an extraordinary example of the continuation of the survival of the soul, and the image of the cross kind of turned around from this horrible thing to this great sense of light and hope. And yet for people on the outside down below, they said, we caused this guy to fail in his mission. But his gift was in his failure. Because in the failure, he rose beyond all people. You see? And this is the miracle of the gift of failure. That failure itself is a present. It is the constant teacher always at our side. Thanks for